Be it frogs, salamanders, or newts, most amphibians are tiny little critters that aren't all that scary. However, there are some big amphibians that are so large that they truly are terrifying. Here are 15 of the biggest amphibians ever seen. Number 15. The coastal giant salamander. If you ever travel to southwestern British Columbia, then you may have a chance to spot a coastal giant salamander. Growing to as much as 34 centimeters in length, when fully grown they're typically found around the mountains, streams, and lakes of British Columbia's dense forests. They tend to both forage for food and opportunistically hunt whatever they can find, with their prey including everything from tiny insects to small fish and larvae. In order to defend themselves from potential predators, they have the ability to both produce a painful bite and secrete toxins through their skin that cause nausea when consumed. Beyond their natural defenses, they're also very well protected by law, as British Columbia's Wildlife Act bans citizens from either killing them or collecting them as pets. We are confident that these salamanders will continue to stick around for the foreseeable future. Number 14. The Blythe's River Frog. If you ever venture into the forests of Myanmar, Thailand, Singapore, and Malaysia, you may find a Blythe's River Frog or two. Coming in at a length of 26 centimeters and a weight of 1 kilogram, they typically reside amongst rocky outcrops and gravel and forest streams. By many accounts, they are the largest frog in Asia and are by all accounts an impressive species. However, they are threatened by various things such as hunting, collection for the pet trade, and habitat loss, and thus their numbers are declining. Therefore, due to their near-threatened classification by the IUCN, there's a very real threat that they could be in a lot of trouble in the future. Number 13. The Fire Salamander. As far as salamanders go, few are quite as colorful as the Fire Salamander. They're found throughout southern and central Europe in countries such as Greece, Italy, France, Germany, and Spain. And they typically reside in small brooks and ponds. They come in at lengths of up to 25 centimeters and typically feast on creatures such as spiders, earthworms, and slugs. Now, what sets them apart is that they have skin that sports both black and bright yellow splotches, which are there in order to warn predators that they're toxic. The toxin within them is known as samanderin and is generally secreted from their skin. If touched or ingested, it causes pretty nasty symptoms such as strong muscle convulsions, hypertension, and hyperventilation, and in high doses it can even lead to death. Therefore, while they may be pretty, we suggest keeping your distance if you see one in the wild. Number 12. The Hellbender. Of all the salamanders in North America, none are quite as large as the Hellbender. Found throughout the eastern United States, they can grow to be a length of up to 40 centimeters and weigh in at a whopping 2.5 kilograms. It feasts primarily on crayfish and small fish that can only really live in habitats that have a constancy of dissolved oxygen, temperature, and water flow. Thus, they generally stay among rocky areas and fast-flowing streams, and while they are quite large, they're actually preyed upon by large fish and reptiles. However, despite being relatively harmless, in recent years human developments such as dam building have caused the precise habitat conditions they require to become strained. Thus, they're considered to be near-threatened by the IUCN. Number 11. The African Bullfrog. Few frogs are nearly as bullish as the African Bullfrog. Found throughout South Africa, it can live in essentially any habitat, with these including everywhere from dry savannas to tropical rainforests. They grow to a length of 24 centimeters and a weight of about 1.4 kilograms. It does so thanks to their status as a voracious carnivore. They're known as voracious carnivores thanks to the fact that they enjoy feasting on insects, small rodents, reptiles, and small birds, and at times, they'll even go so far as to cannibalize their own species. They're able to catch their prey thanks to their large mouths and sharp teeth, and they're so aggressive that they will even bite humans when in captivity. As a result, while they are very common and not all that threatened, they still are a stellar species. Number 10. Cane toad. While the cane toad may look unassuming, we'd bet that you wouldn't want to come into a close encounter with one. Found throughout South and Central America, they stand apart due to the fact that they're extremely toxic. Now, in terms of size, they are quite large. At a maximum length of 24 centimeters, they can easily dominate smaller prey such as rodents, reptiles, birds, and bats. However, the way in which they defend themselves from both animals and humans alike is by secreting a milky white fluid known as bufotoxin from their skin. When consumed in small quantities, the toxin is known to cause hallucinations, and when consumed in large quantities, this toxin is potent enough to kill a human. As a result, their bufotoxin is actually considered by many countries to be a drug on the same level as heroin or LSD. Yet beyond their toxicity, what makes these frogs a true menace is their status as an invasive species. That's because they've been introduced in locales such as Australia, Southeast Asia, the Caribbean, and the United States to deal with insect infestations. This has caused them to unintentionally run rampant. So it shouldn't come as a surprise that cane toad populations are facing no existential threats. Number 9. The Lake Junin giant frog. If you ever venture high into the Andes, you may be lucky enough to find the Lake Junin giant frog. Found both in Lake Junin and a number of surrounding rivers, streams, and canals, these frogs survive at an incredibly high altitude of up to 4,600 meters, and thus can survive in relatively cold water temperatures. In order to grow, they feed on insects, water snails, and small fish, and as a result, they come in at lengths of up to 30 centimeters and weights of up to a half a kilogram. Yet despite their incredible physical stature, they're considered to be an endangered species. This is because they face several threats such as capture for human consumption, predation by introduced trout, pollution from mining, agriculture, and human waste, and water fluctuations caused by the nearby Upamayo Dam. To make matters worse, conservationists have little success in increasing their population, as experimental breeding programs that have been successful in the past have all but stopped. As such, only time will tell whether or not this species will last long term. We are constantly adding more people to the Top 5's production team to bring you all the best content. Be sure to subscribe with notifications on and hit the like button. Number 8. Surinam horned frog. As far as amphibians go, we think you'd agree that the Surinam horned frog is the king of disguise. Found in freshwater marshes and pools throughout the northern Amazon basin in countries such as Colombia, Surinam, and Brazil, they can grow to lengths of up to 20 centimeters long. They are able to do so thanks to the fact that they're incredible hunters, yet they don't practice a typical technique. You see, because they look almost identical to large leaves, they will generally hide amongst piles of leaves with only their eyes protruding. Then once they see some potential prey, they'll spring out of the mud and capture it in their jaws with their sharp teeth. They're also very territorial and aggressive, and have been found dead in the wild with the remains of an impossible to ingest victim still protruding from their mouths. As a result, they are widely known as Pac-Man frogs, as they truly will try to eat whatever comes their way. As such, we think you'd agree that the Surinam horned frog is nothing if not impressive. Number 7. The mountain chicken frog. While there are plenty of strange names in the animal kingdom, few quite match that of the mountain chicken frog. Native to the mountainous areas of the Caribbean islands of Dominica and Montserrat, it is a rather impressive species, as it can grow to lengths of about 22 centimeters and weights of up to 1 kilogram. However, this physical stature has been its downfall. After all, as its name suggests, it tastes a lot like chicken, and its large size means that it has a lot of meat in its legs. In fact, until quite recently, it was Dominica's national dish, and due to its loud call and tendency to sit out in the open, it was an easy target for hunters. While this hunting was officially banned in Dominica in 2003, the frog still continued to face threats. Most notably, in 2003, half of the island of Montserrat was destroyed in a volcanic eruption, with this practically wiping out the majority of the island's population. The frog also became a victim to a terrible fungal outbreak of a disease known as chytridiomycosis, which between the years 2002 and 2004 brought the island's frog population down to critical levels. In response, several captive breeding programs have been set up, yet today they've all but ended. Therefore, it's very likely that this frog won't be around in a few short years. Number 6. The Chilean helmeted bullfrog. While this frog's name may be quite a mouthful, the Chilean helmeted bullfrog is undoubtedly a special species. Found in deep ponds and reservoirs across central Chile, they can grow to as much as 32 centimeters and 1 kilogram in weight. Known for their broad head and large mouth, they hold the distinction of being the largest frog in the Americas, and they use this size to their advantage in order to overpower and swallow fish, invertebrates, small birds, small mammals, and other frogs. However, where their size doesn't help them is in combating human interference. You see, they're considered to be a vulnerable species by the IUCN, and this is primarily because they're often eaten as food by the local Chileans. The result of this has been the creation of frog farms. However, because they take 3 years to reach a marketable size, these farms haven't been all that lucrative. This has led to the widespread hunting of wild frogs to meet demand, and this has been made worse by the fact that they're also captured to be sold as pets. To make matters worse, they've also been facing increased mortality due to rising water temperatures, habitat loss, introduced invasive species, and the widespread impact of a chytrid fungus that's been causing them to harden up and die of asphyxiation. So it may be only a matter of time until these frogs are in some serious trouble. Number 5. The Japanese giant salamander. There are few amphibians that are quite as interesting as the Japanese giant salamander. While they have very slow metabolisms and can go for weeks without eating, they're still able to reach a massive size, as they have the ability to grow up to 1.5 meters long and weigh 25 kilograms. Found in both the mountainous central highland regions and small southern islands of Japan, they primarily live in cold, fast-flowing rivers where oxygen is in good supply. During the day, Japanese giant salamanders hide under large rocks along the shore, but at night they'll hunt fish, insects, crayfish, snails, and small mammals. Due to it having extremely poor eyesight, it does so by relying on both its sense of smell and the vibrations in the water, where it will then pounce on its prey and hold it down with its array of sharp teeth. However, if it's the salamander itself that's being threatened, they have a few unique tools in their arsenal. The first is that when they're aggravated or stressed, they can secrete a sticky white mucus that is toxic to many predators. Weirdly enough, the sticky secretion has a foul odor and smells like Japanese peppers, and as a result, the Japanese translation of their common name is the big pepper fish. But if they do happen to sustain an injury during an attack, giant salamanders have amazing regenerative capabilities and are able to regrow skin and bones if necessary. When coupled with their 70-year lifespan, it becomes clear that these salamanders are really up for anything. However, despite their capabilities, human destruction and pollution of their river habitats has given them a designation as being near threatened by the IUCN. As such, we hope they're afforded some extra protection sooner rather than later. Number 4. The Goliath Bullfrog. Of all the frogs in the world today, the species that holds the distinction of being the largest is the Goliath Bullfrog. Found in a relatively small tract of land between southwestern Cameroon and equatorial Guinea, they reside in fast-flowing rivers during the day and generally emerge onto land at night. It is rare to find them far outside the dense, humid habitat of the inner jungle, and it's here that they find their prey. As tadpoles, the only thing that they will eat is a plant known scientifically as the Warmingi, and due to it only growing around waterfalls and fast-flowing water, the plant therefore limits their range. When they grow up, they begin to feast on practically anything they can get their mouth around, with their prey including creatures such as spiders, worms, fish, newts, salamanders, mollusks, crabs, baby turtles, young snakes, and small mammals. This varied diet allows them to grow extremely large, and at a length of 32 centimeters and a weight of 3¼ kilograms, they're absolutely massive. However, this doesn't mean that these frogs don't have quite a few enemies. In the wild, they're often hunted by Nile crocodiles and Nile monitor lizards, and these have helped them to limit their growth potential. Beyond their natural threats, they're also hunted by humans due to them being relatively large and quite nutritious, and this has become quite a problem. That's because they've become extremely overhunted, and when combined with a loss of habitat and their appeal to an exotic pet owner, their numbers have dwindled to the point that they are now an endangered species. In response, local governments have tried to regulate the rate at which they're hunted and put limits on the pet trade, which have helped to slow down the loss of these animals. However, only time will tell whether or not these large frogs will be able to survive far into the future. Number 3. The Chinese giant salamander. As far as amphibians go, few are quite as rare in the wild as the Chinese giant salamander. Historically, they were found across central, southwestern, and southern China, but they're now found in limited areas around the Yangtze, Yellow, and Pearl rivers. Habitat-wise, they live exclusively underwater and generally reside in both rocky hill streams and lakes with clear water, where they'll typically favor areas with rocky crevices. It feeds on animals such as insects, millipedes, horsehair worms, amphibians, freshwater crabs, shrimp, and fish, and does so by not using its eyesight, but by using its special sensory nodes to detect prey moving in the water. This feeding allows the average Chinese giant salamander to grow to a length of 115 centimeters and a weight of 30 kilograms, while the largest of them all have come in at a whopping 180 centimeters in length and a weight of 50 kilograms. However, despite being an incredible species, they are extremely hard to find in their natural habitat. In fact, they are so rare that at less than 50,000 specimens, they are critically endangered in the wild. Despite this, they're extremely easy to find on factory farms, where there are an estimated 3.7 million in government-sanctioned farms, and perhaps even more in underground operations. These farms mainly supply the food market, as the salamander is considered to be a delicacy, although they are also known to supply the traditional Chinese medicine market. When the voracious appetites of the salamander eaters are combined with pollution of rivers, the destruction of habitats for human development, the impacts of a disease known as the ranavirus, and the fact that poachers can make as much as $260 per kilogram when selling them, it's not hard to see why the population is declining. So we just hope some serious conservation measures are put in place to protect this extremely endangered species. Number 2. The American Bullfrog. Simply put, few amphibians are quite as iconic as the American bullfrog. They're found throughout the eastern United States and Canada, although they have been intentionally introduced in areas as far removed as western North America, Brazil, Europe, and China, in order to provide both a source of food and act as a biological control agent in habitats that are out of whack. They are extremely adaptable to practically any environmental situation, and will ambush and feed on anything that is small enough for them to fit in their mouths. This can even include animals such as rodents, small lizards and snakes, small birds, scorpions, tarantulas, and bats. And as a result of this insane nutritional intake, they can on average grow to lengths of 15 centimeters and weights of 500 grams, with even some reaching a size of 20 centimeters in length and 800 grams in weight. This size allows them to effectively be very territorial, and they will aggressively attack anything that enters their perceived range. Yet despite their size, one predator that they cannot stay away from are humans. That's because across the southern United States, bullfrog meat is seen as a great source of protein. As such, hunters will often go out at night on boats where they will shine lights at bullfrogs to disable them before capturing them with a 3-pronged spear. Once captured, the frog's legs are then breaded and fried up, and reportedly taste and cook in ways quite similar to fried chicken. Therefore, if you ever happen to be in their range, then you might want to try having one as a snack. Number 1. The South China Giant Salamander. Few animals have a story quite as sad as the South China Giant Salamander. Formerly found throughout southern China, it's perhaps the largest of the 3 giant salamander species, and it's believed to grow to lengths of up to 2 meters long by feasting on animals such as small fish, amphibians, and mammals. In fact, for all intents and purposes, it's considered to be quite similar to its more populous cousin, the giant Chinese salamander. However, a lot of specifics about the salamander are not known to scientists because there may not be any left in the wild. You see, this species was only differentiated from the more standard giant Chinese salamander after a study of museum specimens from Canada, the UK, and the US noticed some genetic variation. This led to researchers beginning to look for the salamander, yet many now fear that the salamander may have hybridized with the giant Chinese salamander, to the point where the species may no longer exist. To make matters worse, scientists aren't even sure exactly what the South China giant salamander looks like, as almost all of the samples that have been preserved have essentially become shriveled up blobs of colorless material, although descriptions from 1924 suggest that it is brownish red and quite long. As a result, there is a very real possibility that this amphibian may in fact be gone forever. We just hope that researchers will be able to either do effective wildlife surveys or find an innovative way to efficiently test farm-bred salamander stocks to determine if they're still around. Watch our Animals playlist for more top 15 videos about animals. Sit back, relax, and binge watch all of our best animal-related videos.